Our usual Monday morning press conference in which we accomplish two things. The first is we update as to anything that has occurred with gun violence in the prior week. And the second is we either talk about a unit within the DA's office or a special issue of some sort. Today, we are going to be talking about issues having to do with ATVs and dirt bikes in Philadelphia. I'd like to acknowledge the people who are here. And they include First Assistant Robert Listenby, Assistant District Attorney Hermione Cadet from the Major Trials Division. Hermione Cadet is working on a case of some importance, the William Cropper case, that in some ways relates to issues around dirt bikes and ATVs. We also have ADA Mike Lee, who is the Director of our Adult Diversion Unit and Legislative Affairs. We have ADA Chesley Lightsey, the Chief of the Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, who is here, among other things, to be able to respond to any inquiries about the homicide that occurred over the weekend involving a motorcycle, a person on a motorcycle and a person who was on a dirt bike. We have with us Stacy Daniels, who is the coach of the Icons Sports League. And we also have Niobe Nashadine Murphy, who is here with Icons as well. Icons is a sports organization that, as I understand it, provides access to lacrosse. And there's some pretty interesting information that they'll be providing. And we're also expecting Mr. Anton Moore, is he here yet? Well-known community activist who provides prevention and athletic opportunities for young people. My understanding is they include a program in carpentry. Let me shift now, if I may, to gun crimes. This is for the week of June the 5th, 2021 through June the 11th of 21. The number of homicides to date are 245. On this date last year, there were 180. That's an increase of about 36%. During this week, there were 10 homicides, 27 non-fatal shootings. And during this week, there were 64 gun or gun violence incidents. 66 arrests were made by law enforcement, and 62 cases have been opened or charged so far. This week and over the weekend, on Sunday evening, a 28-year-old black male was shot twice in the chest and once in the foot at 56th and Addison in the 18th District. He was transported by police to Penn Presbyterian and placed in critical condition at that time. At about 1:49 p.m. on 5500 Arch, two young men were shot at multiple times, transported to Penn Presbyterian. Both were later pronounced. No arrest has been made by PPD in either of these incidents. And we are asking people in the community who may know anything about this, please come forward and help the PPD and help us to bring to justice people involved in driving this gun violence. Our CARES unit continues to provide support, as always. If anyone needs services or assistance in any way from our CARES unit, please reach out at 215-686-8019. All right, and at this time I'd like to give everyone a reminder, and that reminder is that in our efforts to use prevention, a hot topic these days in Philly when it comes to gun violence, but in our efforts, the Philadelphia Foundation, in partnership with us, is soliciting applications by nonprofits for activity that will tend to prevent gun violence. As you may know, we gave 5 $25,000 grants out already. We have committed to providing at least $1 million this year in grants, and we are on a second round. If we're able to get that money out in our second round in the month of July, then it will be on the street and it will be having its impact as we get into these hotter months when ordinarily we see spikes in gun violence. And that's separate and apart from everything else going on that is causing this spike. So another issue that has really galvanized a lot of people and is causing some controversy in the city of Philadelphia has to do with the dangers caused by ATVs and dirt bikes being driven in Philadelphia. I think it is very careful for us not to lump everyone together and for us not to stereotype. there is a big difference between driving a vehicle down the street and endangering people by driving up and down a sidewalk. There's a difference between traveling at a normal speed and going at an extremely high speed, or going against traffic, or blowing through traffic lights. And we have to be willing to see those distinctions if we're not going to fall into some of our old traps that we have fallen into so many times before. There are people in the dirt bike and ATV culture. There are people who ride motorcycles who are good and law-abiding people. And to the extent they are doing something that is a traffic violation, well, that needs to be addressed. But that is not the same thing as people whose conduct is endangering and is lawless, and whose conduct must be addressed more directly as a crime. We are committed to advocating for opportunities for young people, and this means including providing safe spaces for them to engage in healthy recreation, while also holding those who do violent things or endanger others on dirt bikes and ATVs accountable. I think it's important to recognize that traffic enforcement is done by the Philadelphia Police Department, including the prosecution of traffic offenses. That is done by the Philadelphia Police Department. And so our lane at the DA's office is more limited. Our lane is really twofold. It's to address crimes. And yes, popping a wheelie and riding up a sidewalk with kids in strollers and people walking down that street, that's a crime. That is reckless endangerment of another person. It is disorderly conduct, and it may be a few other things, depending on exactly what you're doing. But ordinary traffic violations are not, and they are not prosecuted by this office. They are in the hands of the PPD, unless there is a decision made on a particular traffic violation, and that is appealed. And once it is appealed, under those limited circumstances, it ends up in our hands. All right, at this time, I would like to introduce three people: ADA Hermione Cadet, who will provide an update on the investigation and prosecution of William Cropper, who was arrested by the Philadelphia Police Department and charged by our office for aggravated assault while riding an ATV. Mr. Cropper drove into the side of a police vehicle, causing mild injuries to a police officer. Nevertheless, he drove into the side of a police vehicle and is currently charged with aggravated assault. First Assistant Robert Listenby will come up next, and he will discuss recent community meetings that he has attended on behalf of the DAO with neighbors from Queen Village and other communities. Some of these meetings are very well attended. There were almost 1,500 people on the last virtual town hall. And you should also know that I have personally been involved in meetings involving PPD, involving Councilmember Dom, Councilmember Squilla, and various other peoples over a period of more than 2 months, trying to look for solutions to the very, very difficult problems and challenges that the police department faces when they're trying to address dirt bikes and ATVs, but they know they can't chase them because they'll kill people. And they also know that blocking roads has real challenges because people on dirt bikes know how to go up on sidewalks and bypass a block. Some of them know how to ride over a police vehicle. And so the truth is the PPD face a very serious challenge here, one in which we have collaborated and will continue to collaborate, working towards creative solutions that might actually make things better. And we will also hear from ADA Mike Lee, who will discuss our city's ongoing collaboration and meetings, including the ones in which I've been involved, with City Council and officials regarding ATVs and dirt bikes. Mike Lee will also discuss prevention models in Baltimore and other cities focused on engaging those who are part of the bike culture. And we will then hear from Coach Stacy Daniels, who will talk about how Icon Sports creates prevention and athletic opportunities. Niobe Nashadine Murphy, who is involved with Icons, but also her daughter, and hopefully Mr. Anton Moore will be here. Finally, we're going to hear from W. Lonnie Herndon, who is the senior pastor at the Church of Christian Compassion, has been kind enough to host us yet again, and then we will take questions. So let us start with ADA Hermione Cadet.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. On May 16th of 2021 at 5200 Spruce Street, plainclothes officers were on patrol for the ATV initiative. The officers observed the defendant, William Cropper, operating an ATV and radioed for marked units to pull in front of the defendant. The officer in the unmarked vehicle exited the vehicle, and the defendant then accelerated his ATV into the door of the officer's vehicle, causing the door to strike the officer and briefly pinning the officer to the car. The defendant then abandoned his ATV and ran on foot. The officers pursued and stopped the defendant after a brief flight. The defendant then proceeded to fight with the officer as he identified himself. Other officers arrived on the scene and helped effectuate the arrest. The case is next listed on Wednesday, June 16th, for a formal arraignment. At that time, our office will formally announce the charges against the defendant. The charges are aggravated assault, criminal mischief, possession of an instrument of crime, simple assault, recklessly endangering another person, resisting arrest, and fleeing or attempting to elude an officer. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bob Listamy, and I had the pleasure of representing DA Krasner at 2 town hall meetings. These meetings were sponsored by Queen Village Community Association, and there were representatives from throughout the city and county of Philadelphia. The representatives, including Eleanor Ingersoll, who moderated the town hall, focused on the serious concerns about dangers to the community presented by dirt bikes and ATVs that were driving up on sidewalks and disrupting traffic. We wanted to be clear during the course of these conversations that the District Attorney's Office is working very closely with the Philadelphia Police Department, particularly Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, and working closely with Councilman Alan Doms and other representatives of the City Council. We've collaborated extensively. Our intelligence director, Chance Lee, has worked closely with them as well to make sure that we try and decide, or at least let folks know what kinds of charges are possible. Clearly, under the circumstances involving the defendant that was just described, aggravated assault is an appropriate charge. However, under many circumstances, we're looking at possible charges of disorderly conduct, which is a misdemeanor of the 3rd degree, fleeing, which is a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, and recklessly endangering another person, which is another misdemeanor of the 2nd degree. In looking at these cases, the charges are determined on a case-by-case basis, with the emphasis upon needing a listed victim to support a charge of recklessly endangering another person. We continue to work on a comprehensive solution to the problem of ATVs and dirt bikes. As the DA has pointed out today, we also want to focus on prevention, not just enforcement. New laws that have been developed and passed by City Council have focused more on the enforcement side. We're looking to the community and to organizations across the city to help us develop comprehensive prevention models that take into account that a lot of young people who are not violating the law are engaged in riding dirt bikes and ATVs. We want them to do it legally and appropriately in the city and county of Philadelphia, and we want to find some ways to do this. The City Council has made recommendations of the possibility of having a facility run by a private entity out near the airport. That's been examined. That was mentioned at the last town hall meeting. We're hoping that that particular approach might work, or other approaches that will be brought forth by other members of the community will be possible solutions. Young people want to be engaged in riding a bike. As a former biker myself, I want to emphasize that it can be a joy-filled enterprise. We do not want folks to be violating the laws or risking the lives of citizens across the city and county of Philadelphia. Thank you very much.
Good morning. As First Assistant Listenby said, there are 3 basic categories for the riding culture, maybe 4. One are lawful riders who have street legal vehicles, who often serve as role models in the communities and are turned to for mentoring, bike repairs, educational opportunities, and personal growth. Another group are riders who engage in low-level criminal offenses like disorderly conduct, fleeing, or recklessly endangering another person. This category of people, if and when they are arrested, we are looking to collaborate even more with communities and cities across the country to find successful ways to engage and divert these young emerging adults and young children. For example, the city of Cleveland and Baltimore both have programs that have three essential components: education about vehicles and their maintenance, the science behind doing tricks, a STEM-based education, and enhancing and celebrating the competition of sport. We're looking to create similar types of diversion opportunities for youth and emerging adults, and even full-grown adults who are engaging in low-level dangerous driving that does rise to criminal nature. For the situation that was outlined earlier by my colleague, that case would be inappropriate for diversion. So we are drawing a distinction the same way we do with many other offenses between balancing prevention, prosecution, and alternatives to trial and incarceration. In addition to Cleveland and Baltimore, we're looking to Miami, Detroit, and New York City, as the culture of riding is very prominent across the United States. We're also reaching out to the American Motorcycle Association to see if we can't develop a road safety curriculum for people to complete and just ride more safely. Often we hear that people feel the most free when they're on these vehicles. And it's very important to acknowledge that the riders are as much a part of our community as the residents, as the elected officials, and as the members of my office standing behind me. We look forward to continue our collaboration with City Council in the gathering of resources and opportunities for people to enjoy what could be a very safe and fun activity. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacy Daniels. I'm a coach within Icons Sports League. Icons Sport League is a lacrosse league, lacrosse and field hockey league. What we do is we provide an outlet for non-traditional sports, for young youth of color. It was by coincidence that I started coaching at Icons. I actually am a basketball player. I'm from North Philly. My daughter was playing on a lacrosse team within Germantown Friends. You know, we have been fortunate enough to be able to send her to a private school. Coach Jazz, who oversees Icon, happened to become recruiting. She saw my daughter on the field, and she's like, she has to play for us. It was a new beginning. My daughter was also a basketball player. To come into this non-traditional sport was like a wow for me. I knew nothing about lacrosse. My daughter came in, took it in, became a natural. I'm so on board. I'm a full force mom about everything. You know, I want to be able to her to have every opportunity as possible, and to do everything that she wants to do. She got into it. I got into it. Jazz, like, I'm going to make you a coach. She sent me for coaching. You know, I seen the ladies come in, the young ladies that come in, and how it provides the opportunity for them to do something that's not traditional. We have so many girls who have going to college for lacrosse. I'm like, wow, I've never seen it. You know, basketball, in order to go to college for basketball, the numbers are like maybe 30 out of 1. With lacrosse, with them playing lacrosse, it's like 1 out of 8. So other avenues they have given the girls, they have march for the women who have died in police custody, which was a great opportunity for them to do their civil duties, you know, their community service. We play at 33rd and Diamond. The community comes out. They like, we never seen young ladies of color or people of color playing lacrosse. So it opened up their eyes. They become interested. The whole community comes out and participate when they see us out there. It's allowed my daughter to be an activist. She's become a publicist. It's also, at this point, allowed us to venture out into Nike. Nike's looking at us, you know, that's something that's coming out, and then offer avenues, interns for the girls to be in Nike, interns for the girls to be, we have interns in Einstein, just it's loads of opportunity has come and be able to keep the youth out of trouble as well. We also have boys of color, so all those avenues are being touch based by icons and jazz, and I just love her for it. But my time is running. I'm gonna let my daughter get in here, and she'll tell you more about it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Niobe, and I play as a midi on the Icons High School team, and I'm also the public relations coordinator for the Icons Legal Coalition. So yeah, I'm also doing publicist work with the team, and they've offered me plenty of opportunities. But I would also like to say that Icons serves as a beacon of hope for people of color that are youth in our community, and has taken extra steps to speak up against the violence within this community in the form of organizing marches and initiatives, and even having meetings with Congress with like diligently constructed reforms that we have presented before them. And I feel like lacrosse as a sport is mostly white predominantly played sport, and I think it has offered plenty of opportunities for people into intercity that look just like me. And I've had players on my team that have come from situations where their parents might have been stuck in like some sort of way, or they're in situations where they either paid their own way to join the team, or they didn't feel themselves at home, and that when they speak to us about it, I feel as though they could have turned out a different way. But when they come to Icons and when they come to play with me on the field, they always show me a side of them that I would never believe they ever thought that, or I wouldn't believe they would have fought in schools. Like they'd be showing themselves in a nice, kinder light, or be willing to talk to us about how their stuff is going at home. And I think just having the sport in general has played a great role of it, because I think they're the most competitive and hardworking players because they strive to change their predicament that they're in. And I think just seeing them work so hard and putting all their effort in because they want to do it in a place where they can't really do it at home, it really opened my eyes to what sports can do for our community as someone who plays sports a lot. And in hindsight, I also believe that that lacrosse prevents crime in plenty of ways, because it's been proven that sports has prevented people from using any extracurricular time to do any activities such as that. And as I said before, I've seen it in action. And I think lacrosse is like, I'm sorry, I'm getting really emotional. It's really meaningful for me in general, because as someone who plays sports a lot and someone who's also emotional and empathic with all my teammates, I feel as though playing with these girls and knowing that their lives turned out different, because they would talk to me and be like, they were grateful to have the chance to play with me and Coach Jazz, because she gave them a vision of a future they could never think of. They wouldn't have had these opportunities to get scholarships and stuff, or fight for the chance to change whatever situation they're in, if it wasn't for them playing for a team with me. And seeing them move on and get scholarships and go to colleges, it's really heartfelt for me, because I feel as though them playing with me is a privilege. And I really appreciate that, because I think they wouldn't have had that emotional connection anywhere else, and I don't think they would change that for the world, and neither would I. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Anton Moore, Executive Director of Unity in the Community, that deals with gun violence prevention in South Philadelphia. I know it's been a lot of talk about the ATVs and different things like that, and had a conversation with a good brother named Reg the other day, who's a part of the dirt bike community. And them guys, they just want a chance. They want a chance to express themselves. They want a chance to be a part of something that's good. So we have to do all we can. In South Philadelphia, we assist young people with scholarships to go to college. We help them find jobs. We help them with conflict resolution. We help them, take them outside the community and do different things. We go into the schools and speak to the kids. And in about a month from now, we're going to be launching a Unity in the Community Carpentry Academy, where we're working with at-risk young men in the community between the ages of 14 and 19. We're going to teach them the skill of trade, how to mount TVs, how to put up doors, how to lay down floors. We're going to provide them with a mentor and get them a stipend. Also, we're going to be doing field trips to take the young men outside of their environment. If you know the young men that come from our communities all across Philadelphia, they lack opportunity. They lack hope. And we have to be the ones to restore that. If you look at the schools and the infrastructures in our neighborhoods, they no longer have the trades that they used to offer. But then we ask the question of, why can't you do better? Because the opportunities are not there. So being able to provide them a mentor and a stipend, and at the end of the 20-week program, we're actually going to allow the kids to keep that equipment so they can go and do their own thing and maybe transition into a trade. We got some great trades, Local 332, Local 98, and all those different things here. But we have to start early. We have to start at the age of 14, 15, and 16. Just recently, I was at a family court supporting a young man in my community that was in trouble, made a mistake, but he's going to bounce back from that. Those are the kids that we identify with every day. And why I say opportunity is so important, when you're able to give them that opportunity and work with them and mentor them and guide them in the right direction, you're going to get better results. So we have to put our best foot forward, work hard for our young people, and not just talk to them. It's easy to do a rally. It's easy to do a march because you'll go home, relax. But when you're teaching them something and you're showing them how to do something, you'll get better results in the community. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Pastor W. Lonnie Herndon, the host for this press conference today. And on behalf of the faith community, I'm extremely grateful to work with again and again and again Larry Krasner and all of the ADAs who are doing a marvelous job, the faith community believes, in working towards resolutions to help our community. We look forward to a meeting that will be held here this evening, a town hall, if you will, to talk about solutions from the violence in the city, the murders, and also to the issues with dirt bikes. But again, we are excited to have this conversation. And while there are some dark days, we really do believe, and I'll say this by faith, that really these conversations and these meetings really present hopeful days ahead. Thank you.
All right, we're about to take questions in a few moments, but I just have a couple final comments. I do want to express my gratitude to Council Members Dom and Squilla, who a couple of months ago, Council Member Dom in particular, brought this issue to my attention, listened to me when I suggested certain people within the police department who I thought had unusual insight into these issues, and began this process of discussing. And perhaps even most significantly, I want to thank Councilmember Dom for talking about the idea of obtaining land in the city of Philadelphia where people can ride dirt bikes. That is called imagination. That's called showing imagination, and not just reflexively and in a reactionary way saying this is terrible, not some of it, but all of it, every bit of it, it's all terrible one more time, about an activity that is, at this point, primarily involving black and brown riders. I mean, that's just the reality. What we've heard today, in particular from Coach Daniels and from Niobe, what an amazing speaker, and from Anton Moore, is imagination. You've heard people talking about creative solutions, pathways away from crime, prevention. That's what you've heard them talking about. And so I'd like to share with you briefly the thoughts of Reverend Mark Tyler, with whom I've spoken about this issue on this, because we want to make sure that this goes in a positive direction. And where enforcement has its place, there is enforcement. But where prevention has its place, there is attention that, frankly, we don't usually see in Philadelphia toward prevention. I mean, let's not forget, when everybody was all upset about skateboards, we built the skate park. And we didn't even build it down by the airport. We put it right by the art museum. Well, that activity at that time was something primarily done by white kids, okay? So this city, at times, has shown some imagination about people who are not engaging in the worst aspects of the activity, and is giving them outlets and venues that have turned out to be constructive. Reverend Mark Tyler, as many of you may know, is the chief clergy at the African Methodist Episcopal Mother Bethel Church, which is the mother church for the denomination in Philadelphia, a very storied, famous church, and an important voice in the city. And what he has said, and he, by the way, is a motorcycle rider, has been a motorcycle rider basically his whole life, with some frequency, rides coast to coast from Philadelphia to California. What he has said is we cannot proceed with a lack of imagination. We cannot simply respond to all black ATV and dirt bike riders by throwing the book at them. There needs to be an effort to talk to the leaders in the dirt bike and ATV community. There are people in these communities who are not about crime, and they're not about endangering the public. They're simply a part of that culture. In the same way that the mural arts program many years ago took issues that we were having in Philadelphia with graffiti and used their imagination and came up with something that wasn't just good in the sense that it got people who were doing graffiti that was essentially defacing properties to do something artistic. They didn't just do that, they improved this city forever. We're now looking at 4,000 murals in the city of Philadelphia, an incredibly well-funded organization, an organization that works with youth who are at risk and also works with returning citizens. It has made this city famous. People come from all over the world to look at our murals and take tours and see those murals. So it is possible to have imagination and to do important and interesting things while simultaneously having enforcement where it is necessary. And I have to tell you, as someone who rode a motorcycle myself, when I was in law school for a number of years, I rode a motorcycle and who has spent a very large portion of my life on a bicycle. There's all kinds of people riding all kinds of things. We have to be careful about what we do and not just react instinctively that if some of them are doing things that are criminal in nature, then all of them somehow need to be punished. All right. So we are happy to take questions at this time, and I would point out that we have with us today ADA Chesley Lightsey. If you have any questions about the homicide that occurred over the weekend involving a motorcycle rider and a rider who was killed who had been on a dirt bike, she is able to address that. Are there any questions at this time?
You made a distinction between people just driving down the street on these vehicles and doing other things that may be dangerous to others. But the city council has moved to make these vehicles illegal in general. Do you think that that is the wrong move? Is that too much of a blanket?
No, I don't think what City Council is doing is necessarily the wrong move. There is a role for enforcement that is proper. But what I'm saying is that there is a much bigger solution that has to occur here and has to be sensitive to the fact that there is motorbike culture all over, all over many of our major cities, just like there is actually a trick bicycle culture that is increasingly prevalent in our major cities. This is something that we used to see, primarily from white riders in Colorado. Colorado, as it happens, has about 2,000 kids in a statewide league that involves, BMX bikes and bikes that are used to ride over rough terrain, that sort of thing. And nobody's upset about that or that they might be popping wheelies anywhere. Well, when trick bikes became something that were being done by a lot of kids, and then some of them black kids, and then some of them started to graduate to motorbikes, we need to understand that, yes, there's a role for enforcement, absolutely, the same way there is with cars, but that doesn't mean that everybody who drives a car is a bad person. Let me try to put it to you in an analogy that maybe is more familiar for those of you who have not, who are not motorcycle riders, have not been on a dirt bike, but, if you drive a car at 80 miles an hour, where the limit is 65, you're going to get a ticket. And it's going to be a fairly stiff ticket, and you're going to have to pay some money. And we understand that. If you drive that same car in a 65 zone 120 miles an hour, you're going to be charged with a crime. Because there's a difference in those two types of conduct. There's a difference, likewise, in someone who is on a dirt bike that may not have all the proper lights and turn signals and such, and is popping a wheelie, but is going with the flow of traffic, is not blowing through lights. There's a difference between that and going up on a sidewalk where people are walking and riding your motorcycle or your dirt bike up there quickly, or going against traffic, or blocking lanes so that you can blow through all the lights when the lights are red. This is a matter of degree. In the same way speeding in an automobile is a matter of degree. And we have to make sure that the justice that is done on the enforcement end is individual. Now, having said that, I do see this as being something that can certainly be a part of a larger and imaginative approach to how we address these issues.
You had some of those distinctions you mentioned, driving the wrong way, going up on a sidewalk, can happen pretty quickly if you're on a street and you pull up on a sidewalk. I know you're not the police commissioner, but what would you suggest as a proper approach if people are out on these what's the right enforcement approach right now?
So, one of the reasons we're having these meetings is that the Philadelphia Police Department is very aware that this is a challenge. When you start chasing people on motorbikes, you are risking killing people in the same way that vehicular pursuits used to be done, and it turned out they were more dangerous than not pursuing. That is a problem. It's not their fault, but it's a challenge that they face. Same thing with blocking off roadways. When you have people who are as quick and agile as people on dirt bikes or even ATVs, they can go right up over the sidewalk, they can go through an empty lot. In some instances, they're capable of even going over cars, right? We have to bear in mind that to some extent, their hands are tied from, the rock'em sock'em tactics you might expect on TV. You can pass whatever kind of, regulations you want, but if police are in fact not in a position to be able to chase and pull people over, it's not your solution. Now, I can tell you without giving away all of our tips to people who might be engaging in actual criminal activity, because I'm not going to do that, there are other techniques that are used by police. There are other tactics that are under consideration. We've been in close communication with them, even to the point of trying to be of assistance in drafting potential legislation, either statewide or for city council, which obviously has more limited powers. We are part of that process. But they face a challenge, and it really will not do any good for Philadelphia to do what it does too often, which is everybody starts blaming everybody, instead of recognizing that we have a real challenge here. And the part that's being ignored the most is the role of prevention. Are there any other questions? Yes? I'm going to call our Chief of Homicide and Non-Fatal Shootings forward, Chesley Lightsey.
What I can tell you right now is that the police are very anxious to have help from the public. There were, hundreds, literally hundreds of ATVs out at the time of this murder. There were 50 or more people who, after the murder, took photographs of the decedent. We have a lot of video, but not one person who was out there has come forward to help police. I say this almost every time I get up to speak. The community can take ownership of this by going to the police with information so we can get this shooter off the street. In almost every case of homicide in Philadelphia, there is a $20,000 reward for information. The number you can call is 686-TIPS, T-I-P-S. You can also call the Homicide Detective Division at 686-3334. The assigned detective is Michael Livewell. He is anxious for as much information as anyone who is out there can give. Again, there was a lot of video out there, but until those individuals come forward with the information, that's what the police need in order to be able to bring this shooter in.
Yes, are there any further questions?
Are those diversionary approaches described by ADA Lee, are they in effect now? Are you using those now, or are they in development?
I think development, but let me call Mike forward. Mr. Lee?
They are implemented in other cities, and we are working on adopting them for Philadelphia now.
Any kind of time frame or when you think that'll?
No, we don't have a time frame yet, but we think once we identify the right community partners and speak with all the stakeholders, it should be fairly quick to stand up.
All right. One more question? Is there another question? Yes?
There was just a report that was put out today or yesterday about one of your members of the district attorney's office, Chief Omar Stewart, that allegedly pulled someone over on Pumpkin Drive using his district attorney vehicle. That person turned out to be an FBI agent. Do you know anything about that? Do you have any comment?
I know the source of that report is highly unreliable.
Well, that's why I figured I'd ask.
No, I appreciate your asking me. I appreciate all questions. But, unfortunately, the source of that report is someone who I can say, looking back over more than 3 years of watching his coverage, I have never seen provide truthful and consistently reliable information. In my opinion, he should write fiction. I can tell you that if there is reliable information that indicates there's an issue to address, then we will address it. But in my opinion, all of you, legitimate journalists, and I say that with respect, can do a much better job than that source of information.
So you haven't heard anything about this individual?
I have no further comment on that. Are there any other questions?
Did you have any update on the Keith Gibson case charges against Keith Gibson? The gentleman who's being investigated for the death of his mother and Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, I believe, let's just take this as the last question, but I believe Chessie Lightsey can update us on that.
What I can tell you is our office has approved charges as it relates to the victim at the Dunkin' Donuts and as it relates to the defendant's mother. However, the longer process will be that he is currently in Delaware. Delaware has their own cases that involve him as well, other murders, and other cases as well. And extradition will be a long process. So as of right now, I don't have any update on when we might expect to physically have him here in Philadelphia to officially charge him, but we stand ready to do so when the time comes.
Do you have approved charges regarding the mother? What is the charges?
I don't want to misstate here, but I can tell you it would be murder generally, which is first-degree murder, and related charges as it relates to the gun.
Did the ballistics help you with that? I know the police were
Yes.
thinking it would.
As I'm standing before you right now, I'm not sure we've gotten the official report back from ballistics, but we feel confident that that it will be a report that is helpful given the preliminary review of the evidence. Yep.
Can you confirm the victim of this weekend was identified, the ATV incident?
He was identified. I won't give his name on the record.
All right. Thank you all.